Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to week one of site planning. Um, as always, as you can see, you have the QR code right in front of you on your screen for you to scan um, and complete your or mark your presence for the day. The QR code will appear again subsequently throughout the lecture. So for those of you who may have troubles checking in, and or who may be late to join. So um, since this is the first week of of the course, um, I'm just I'm just going to talk about the underlying um, the underlying or the rationale for site planning, and give you an introduction into some of the components of site of components of a site, and the things that the things that you might think of or that you should think about when you develop a site. And then after that we'll go through the course. We'll go through a course overview, see go through a course overview to see the contents of the course over the next 16 weeks. Um, I have scheduled a I think I have scheduled a guest lecture um, for site planning sometime in either May or June. I have to look into that again now. Um, and then we'll talk about the evaluation plans for the course as well. That's something important that we shouldn't miss. Now, before we move on, I want you all to think of think about an amusement park or a theme park. Think of a or a park, theme amusement park that you've been to, whether it be locally here in Indonesia or somewhere else. Um, Universal Studios Singapore, for example, or SeaWorld, or whatever it is. I want you to think of an amusement park, or even if you haven't been to an amusement park, then just imagine an amusement park that you'd like to go to. Think of it, visualize it in your heads. Um, once you have a good visualization in your head, think about the layout of the park. Think about its layout. When you come through the when you come through the entrance when you come through the entrance, what is the first thing you see? Imagine the first thing you see as you come in through the entrance, and as you navigate your way through the park, around the park, what is the sequence of rides or attractions? So after the entrance, you see a popcorn stand, or you might see, a guest information center, or a certain attraction or certain rides. So navigate your way in your mind, navigate your way around the park. Well, this is like hypnotherapy, isn't it? Navigate your way around the park and visualize the sequence of attractions, sequence of rides, which attraction goes where, what is next to it. And now wonder or think about why they are structured that way. Why is the guest information center close to the entrance? Why is the popcorn stand situated further away? Why is the rest areas, the restrooms are situated in the center of the park, and so on. Visualize it, navigate through it, and then think about the structure of the park. Um, these are the things that or these kind of thoughts may be may be lost when you first visit a theme park. You're just in amazement. You're just in awe when you first maybe when you first visit, say. Excuse me, sorry about that. Um, Thinking about the structure of a park or thinking about the structure of an amusement park may be the last thing that comes in your mind when you first step into an actual theme park. You may be in awe with the attractions, with the sheer size, scale of things, and or just purely with the aesthetics and the atmosphere of it, and thinking, I'm going to have fun today. So these, thinking about the way the park is laid out and structured, why is it done that way? Maybe the last thing on your mind. But I'm going to show you two examples of an amusement park, one that I've been to and one that I would love to go to. So this is an aerial illustration of Warner Brothers Movie World on the Gold Coast in Australia. Now, here, right here, adjacent to the car park, is where we have the entrance. Well, pre-entrance to be exact. This is the ticket. This is where the ticket booths. The ticket booths are situated. That's where you get your tickets, or where you validate your tickets. Here is the actual. This is the actual checkpoint, check-in point, and this is the actual entrance. Now, as you step in, you find a water fountain, elaborately decorated, and from there on, you can decide if you go to the left. There's a ride. If you push on ahead, if you go forward, there's a ride, and you will follow the main street. If you turn to the right, if you turn to your right. So, and along the main street, there are guest services where there's um, a nursery, handicap toilets, and whatnot. Guest services, tourist information center is there. Souvenirs can be bought there, and so on. Then there's a theater and an open piazza over here that serves as a rest area and more of interactive, more of an interactive setting, so that you can interact with the various cartoon characters that are brought to life there by costume staff. Kids area, kids rides, family-friendly attractions, and then here are the more general attractions are situated over here. There's a rest area way back in the corner. That's where not only is there a restroom, or there's not only is there a restroom, but the musola is actually there as well. And then, what else should I highlight? Excuse me. Okay, sorry about that. Um, and the food court is somewhere around here. But each and every attraction, each and every activity that is available on this park is situated relative to one another for a reason, um, I guess, in a way. But the layout or the reasoning behind the layout of Warner Brothers Movie World is not as obvious, if I may say, is not as obvious as the next park that I'm about to show you. Um, Depending on the size of your screen, this might be quite clear or this might be quite small. Um, but this is an aerial illustration of Disney World or Disneyland in Florida, the United States. Now, again, the point of this activity of you thinking about a theme park and me showing you two examples is to give you an illustration of how activities in a theme park is structured and arranged thoughtfully. Now, in Disney World or Disneyland, or no, I don't know the difference between the two. Um, but in Disney, you have the main street after the entrance, and then you have attractions that are geared more towards adults or the adolescents. You have Adventureland, Tomorrowland, Frontierland, and everything. Mickey's Toontown, or what is supposedly a more child-friendly or family attraction, is situated way back in the background, in the furthest point, in the fur, in the furthest point away from the main entrance. Now, I'm guessing that the idea here is so that um, families will take their children to Toontown, where it's a lot more family friendly, kid friendly, where they have a lot more kid friendly attractions there. And as they head towards Toontown, they will see they will see other attractions and and the kids see these other attractions and think, when I'm a bit older, I'd like to go to Frontierland, I'd like to go to Adventureland, or maybe even visit Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, and so on. So the placement of every physical structure and every activity is the result of very careful consideration, and these considerations take into account several factors, existing site characteristics and what facilities or what structures will be built there, and taking into account as well, up to a certain degree, up to a certain extent, human behavior. Um, maybe the placement of more child friendly attractions is situated further away from the main entrance, um, is simply purely so that psychologically um, the kids will see other attractions and think, oh, big kids attractions are cool. um, I want to try that. And so as they make their way back, um, they might be able to sneak in and sneak in and try an attraction or two, or a bigger kids attraction or two, and whatnot. Fun fact: since Disneyland is geared towards children, when Walt Disney built the park, he often stood on his knees and imagined how things would look like from the perspective of his of his most prospective customers, which are children, of course, and children are a lot shorter in stature than adults. So that's how he liked to that's how he supervised the whole build process. Um, so if that amount of thought, taking into account site characteristics, climate maybe, and what structures will be built, what's the orientation of the development and everything, how people will behave, how people will move about the site. If if that amount of thought went into the planning and development of an amusement park, surely the same amount of thought is involved in planning a city block, a residential community, or even a whole city. And that's what we'd like. That's what we'd like to discuss throughout the course, throughout the 16 weeks. Um, the thoughts, the considerations, and the thought processes that go into the planning and the development of a site. Um, to kick off the thought process, here are the frequently asked questions in developing a site. Um, what facilities will be built on the site? What activities will be accommodated? Where will the development take place? And how is the site and its surroundings? How is its overall condition? Um, questions 3 and 4, where the development will take place and how is the condition of its site and its surroundings, correspond strongly to site planning, specifically the location of the site and its characteristics. Now, site, when we talk about site and location, some people may get the two terms mixed up. So just to get it in the just to clear things up, when we talk about a site, site is a tangible object. The term site simply refers to a plot of land with a certain size, allocated for development. And a site is, or a site can also be viewed as a system that is made up of several components, both man-made and natural, that constantly interact with each other. And on the other hand, when we talk about location, location is an intangible thing. It relates to an object's relative position to other objects within a given space. So one is a tangible, sizable, or tangible object, and location is intangible because it refers to a position, the position of a site relative to other objects or relative to other sites in its surrounding within a given space. Now, Lynch and Hack defined site planning as the arrangement of structures and the shaping of spaces, or to be precise, the art and the engineering that goes on behind the arrangement of structures and the shaping of spaces. Site planning involves the arrangement of land uses, and activities. And it also, as I mentioned previously, it also involves in careful consideration of the placement of objects and the sequence or placement of objects and activities within a given space and time, of course. You want your guests to be at the plaza, for example, at a certain time of the day. to watch a pre-arranged or a pre-arranged show and so on. And when we talk about site planning, we focus on smaller scale development. We're not gonna develop a quarter of a city or anything like it, but we're going to focus on smaller scale developments, say a group of buildings, maybe within a city block or two city blocks, um, or maybe perhaps planning and developing a small residential community, a cluster of houses, and other activities and other functions that support or that enhance the quality of life or the quality of life and the experience of actually living in these residential communities. Now, um, it has been said that 60% of the Earth's land surface is under the management of people, but that 100% of the world is affected by the practices of the management. That's according to Russ. These two statements from Russ and Beer and Higgins highlight the urgency of site planning in general. So, a properly conducted site planning, um, as Beer and Higgins put it, can often indicate that more effective and cheaper approaches to site layout and design are possible, and therefore it can be used as a way of increasing the profitability of individual projects or even making them possible where previously they had seemed uneconomic. Um, and properly conducted, well, if you take profitability into mind, I guess putting the souvenir shop near the main entrance or exit is does make sense, because maybe you'd like to get some attributes or souvenirs before you walk into the park, or maybe after seeing a theme park, the contents of a theme park, you might walk out and think, oh, I want to bring something back, and then walk into the souvenir shop before leaving the vicinity. So these statements underline or highlight the urgency of site planning. Um, and I guess the key words or the key takeaways here are perhaps the effectiveness and the possibility of making things happen. Okay, so I previously mentioned that a site is a system that consists of natural and man-made components that constantly interact with each other. Now, how these components are grouped or viewed vary greatly depending on how you would look at them. For example, you might look at a site and then categorize the components or whatever it is that is available there into two groups: tangible and intangible components. Tangible components such as tangible components may be natural, they may be man-made. Natural components include soil, maybe the air quality, light or sunlight exposure, the duration and everything. Um, water runoff, maybe perhaps minerals that are available, that can be found underground, and then of course flora, fauna, any specific or local species, or maybe there are invasive species and so on. And then of course man-made tangible components such as buildings and infrastructure. And then you have intangible components. Perhaps there's an existing land use or land uses, existing economic activities within the site and around the site, Perhaps there are cultural values that you might need to consider before developing a site. Um, General public perception, perhaps, and of course, the legal framework, rules and regulations, and even religious or beliefs, a system of belief that exists in and around the site that you might need to consider. So that's one way to look at it. Here's another way to look at site components. You can group and categorize site components physically, socially, and perhaps legal and administratively. The physical makeup of a site may include slope and topography, the geology of things, vegetation, hydrology, the microclimate, vista or views, including structures and infrastructure, which are generally man-made. And then you have the social environment, or social components, the economy, the culture, the level of education, politics, health and safety, and so on. Then the legislation, maybe there are folk traditions that has something to do with the religion and the system of belief. Are there any spatial plans to consider, and the legal status of the land itself? You may also want to view site components as James Lagro Jr. did: physical, biological, and cultural. Um, the physical aspects of a site component are soil, topography, hydrology, geology, and climate. So anything to do with its physical makeup, the physical characteristics of a given site. And then the elements that inhabit the site, or the biological components, flora, fauna, and then the people that inhabit the site, or the cultural aspects of the site: land use, legality, utility, how people move about, circulation, history, and other sensory items. And what what Lagro did was he uh, he continued to detail or break down these components into several, or he continued to describe these components according to their variables, or their respective attributes. For example, it might be a physical component, categorically speaking. Then that might fall into the soil subcategory, and then here are other attributes or variables that you need to consider when you talk about soil: its carrying capacity, its ability to bear load. Can you build a high-rise there when it's a certain type of soil? Its porosity, its stability, how easy it is, how much does it risk erosion? Is it good fertile grounds to grow crops and everything? Acidity levels, and so on. And perhaps a subcategory of topography: what's the elevation? What's the slope? Because if elevation and slope affects accessibility greatly, not only for human circulation, but also when you develop a site, elevation and slope can be a challenge, as you have to move building materials, and you have to place them in a way so that they would not pose a threat to the development process and everything. So And another example, water-related hydrology, surface runoff. This has something to do with the slope and elevation, and maybe even water salinity, the level of salt, within the water. Are there any aquifers in the site, and etc. The geology. What's the shape of the site? Are there any seismic activities? Are there any seismic activities in the site? Of course, when we talk about seismic activities, we can't just talk about one site. Seismic activities is a whole region, sort of thing. And then how deep is the bedrock or tanah keras? How deep is the bedrock? That will affect greatly on the type of foundation, the type of structure that can be built on top of the line, on top of the land or on top of the site. And then climate, such as sun exposure. I know that sun exposure varies greatly globally. Here in Indonesia, we are lucky enough to have adequate, if not more than adequate, sun exposure throughout the whole year. Half day, daylight, 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours of night, so on. Wind speed and rainfall. Those are the things that you might consider, that you should consider when you talk about the climatic aspects of a site. Biological components, vegetation, flora, fauna. Are there certain plant communities? Are there certain tree specimens or perhaps invasive species that shouldn't be there? And if you let these invasive species prevail, then they might cause damage to existing plant communities, and perhaps even threaten certain tree specimens and so on. When you talk about animals or the fauna, you're not just listing what species or what kind of animals live in the site and around the site, but you need to identify as well where they live, and you need to determine whether the site that you will develop is perhaps a habitat for threatened species. So if you ruin that habitat, then you might contribute to the extinction of an entire species. So, and then land use, legality, and the utilities. Of course, I think these subcategories are commonly discussed in other subjects within our department. So, are there any previous or existing land use? Perhaps the site that you acquired for development was used for something else. For example, keeping in line with the theme park, thing that I mentioned at the beginning. Maybe you were to build a theme park, and you were given a site, but the site was previously a nuclear power plant, for example. So that would mean that you need to take certain measures to make sure that the site is safe. It is clean, before you proceed with developing your theme park, because the last thing you need is for your theme park visitors to come in with a pair of eyes and to leave with 3 sets of eyes, and perhaps even other mutant abilities. And you also need to consider the land uses surrounding the site. Maybe some land uses are perhaps incompatible with other land uses. For example, the theme park. The theme park may not be compatible if may not be compatible. It may not be a good idea to develop a theme park if the surrounding area is filled with residential, high density residential settlements, um, or perhaps a theme park in the middle of an industrial site, or a theme park situated right next to a landfill, for example. So not only that you need to consider the land use of your site, the previous land use of your site, but you also need to consider the land use that are the existing land uses that are surrounding the site, and perhaps even refer to city plans, regional plans to see whether there are possibilities of these land uses changing sometime in the near future, and so on. And when you talk about the legal aspects of a site, then of course the site's legal status, its ownership, whether it's and perhaps because of its status and ownership, there may be limitations to what you can build, or what you can develop, and so on. And of course, utility, sanitation. Are there any existing sanitation network or sanitation facilities? Are there any storm drains? Is it connected to the central gas network? Is water available? Clean water is available, and so on. And if none of these utilities exist, then of course you would be responsible in providing these basic utilities to the site and to the future residents or the future users of the site. Um, other cultural components, circulation, the street grades. Are they primary or arterial roads? Are they collectors, local, or are they local roads, and so on? Because these different levels, or these different categories dictate how much flow you can have, and the kind of traffic that you are allowed to have circulating in and around your site. And of course, we can't forget history. Um, perhaps a site has a historical value, or perhaps the site is situated near a historical landmark. For example, if you were to build a theme park not next to, but near, say, a kilometer away from Prambanan Temple or from Borobudur Temple, then you might orient your site in a way so that it faces the temples, or that it borrows certain design elements from the temples, and try to make your development, or you try to contextualize your development within the setting, and so on. Now, interestingly, when we talk about the sensoric, when we talk about sensory or sensory components, we talk about visibility. Is there any good views? Anything picturesque views that can be seen from your site. And if it's picturesque, how are the sight lines? Do you have clear sight lines to it? Do you need to remove trees or other structures or vegetation to ensure a clear sight line, to ensure clear sight lines and accessibility to the to those visuals, visual quality, perhaps even noise. If you're building a residential area uh, near near a freeway, for example, then you might need to take measures to reduce the noise coming from the freeway, or maybe a residential area near railroad tracks. Then you might need to provide a buffer so that the noise wouldn't affect the residential area or the residential development that you're doing, um, or it wouldn't affect it much, so to say. And are there any strong odors or perhaps smells emanating from around the site? As I as I gave as I mentioned earlier, you wouldn't want to build a theme park or a residential area right next to a landfill, because obviously it'll stink. So going further into our discussion, I guess when you talk about site components and characteristics, uh, every component interact with one another, and these interactions um, determine the processes that occur within a development site. Excuse me. Now, these components, along with how they're situated, their relative position, gives character to the site. Now, however, oftentimes there are certain components that become very dominant, that become a very strong determinant. For example, if you have like here, I mentioned a endemic vegetation, um, pine forests, for example. It can actually become an attraction of its own because of its natural characteristics. Um, my virtual background is full of gum trees, and these white gum trees are endemic to Queensland, um, and gum tree forests are everywhere, and I think like pine forests, uh, or any other forest, I think it's it has a certain attraction to it, because these gum trees become nesting grounds to kookaburras, and in summer, um, 5 o'clock in the morning, you hear the kookaburras sing, and they're the ones that wake you up. So yeah, you wouldn't want to remove these gum trees. You wouldn't want to remove any endemic, or you do not want to remove too much of any endemic vegetation, because they may serve as native as habitats for native animal species and so on, and that again adds to the character of the site, adds to the character of the place, and so on. um, yeah, whether natural or man-made, I think at some levels at some levels, every site has their own unique has a unique character to it as a result of the as a result of the availability of such components like the gum tree that I just mentioned, and um, and perhaps even the removal of it, or the removal or the modification of those components. Um, I believe some of the gum tree, some of the gum trees and other vegetations in my virtual background have been removed to make way for fire trails, and these fire trails um, were made to and these fire trails were prepared to help emergency service crews control bushfires, for example. And during the and outside of the bushfire season, which is which is any time outside of summer, these fire trails become available for us for the public to access, you want to take a whether you want to take a hike through the trails or you want to ride through the trails and so on. So the availability of these natural features and perhaps even the modification of these natural features become part of the site characteristics. It becomes and it lends itself to the uniqueness of each site, if that makes sense. And of course, any amount of observation with any amount of observation, um, anyone can identify a site and perhaps even give further attributes to it um, according to its main components. Now, um, if you take into account or if you take into consideration the locational aspects and or the components within it, then you can you can categorize sites according to these attributes. But these six categories are very general. Um, they don't necessarily represent the entire variety of sites. But for example, it could be a rural site, it could be a coastal site, it could be an urban or even a site situated smack dab in the middle of a forest. Um, or you could say that it's relatively flat. It's got rolling hills. It's not that flat, but it's not that steep either. It's a very steep site, or it's a very hilly site. Um, so these are the terms that you would use to describe a site. It's relatively dry, or it's quite wet, marshlands, swamps. Um, or the site has dense vegetation. It could be a savanna, um, or you can describe a site. You can describe a site with its geologic attributes, sandy. It might be in the middle of a desert, or perhaps the soil is predominantly clay, um, or it's unbuilt, it's partially built, it's a historic site, um, it's a conservational site, or it's a residential site, and so on and so forth. So these um, these categories or these terms, these are the terms that, again, would that you would use to describe a site, whether it be in any in one language or another. Okay, now before I move on to the course syllabus and the evaluation plans, um, I welcome I welcome anyone everyone to who might have any questions or comments um, regarding the introduction that I just gave. All right. Um, it's still very early, so that's okay. Okay. I think we'll just push on with the course syllabus and evaluation plans. Now, we have 16 weeks, and I think in either week 12 or week 13, sometime in May, there's a public holiday. So instead of 16 weeks, we have effectively 15 weeks to conduct the course for content delivery and evaluation. We are now in week 1, but next week we will dive, we'll jump in headfirst into site planning by discussing the site planning processes. And then throughout weeks 3 and 4, we will try to identify the site potentials and site issues. Weeks 5 and 6, we'll discuss the external components and perhaps even conduct a simple external analysis um, of the situation surrounding our site. And then weeks 7 and 8, we look inwards and conduct internal analysis and what components or what aspects that we need to consider in conducting these internal analysis. And then by week 9, we would we would begin to draw up or conceive site development concept, and throughout weeks 11 and 12, and or throughout weeks 11 to 13, we will continue further with the concept development, and finally produce produce not only a conceptual site but an actual site, which this these which then leads me to the evaluation. Now, first of all, we do have a mid-semester quiz, which is a written individual quiz. And then we have stage 1 progress, stage 2 progress, stage 3 progress, and the final one is an exhibition of your task. Now, you might be wondering, what task? I haven't even talked about it. Well, I'm going to talk about it right now. So I will stop sharing this for a moment, and let's switch to this. Okay. I hope my screen is up. Hope you can see my screen already. I'll bring it up just in case. So as I mentioned, we have the mid semester test, or the mid semester quiz, and then we have We have progress stage 1, progress stage 2, and progress stage 3 of our big task, so to say. And then we have evaluation 5, um, which is the exhibition bit that I was talking about, or the presentation of your work and the submission of a video or 3D animation. So now the idea of the primary task is to give you an exercise in site development. So it's a group task. I see how many of us are in this class. I think we're looking about 19. Um, anyway, we're looking about 90, 18, 19 students. So I'd say since this is a group work, maybe yeah, a group of 6 students, that would give us around about 3 groups. Maybe one group will have 7 students, and the task is to analyze site suitability and to create a program of activities. What activities will be put on the site, will be accommodated by the site, and then formulate a concept or a development concept which consists of a block plan and block plan not necessarily that detailed, a block plan of the various activities that you would that you would accommodate within a site. So this primary task involves the preparation the of the base map, and then a formulation of a site development concept, and identifying existing conditions of a site, and then the description of the activities that would be accommodated within the site, the identification and the establishment of criteria required to accommodate these activities, and then land use or land suitability, and then how would you accommodate the transformation of this land suitability analysis into a site program and so on, and then finally you would come up with a concept or a plan to develop a site. I think I'll give you. I think I might be able to find samples of previous work for you to draw inspiration from. I think the um, I think the consultation bits are pretty straightforward. Sorry, this should be week this should be week 16. Now, I keep mentioning site development, site development, site development. But the first thing you would need to do to complete or to start with this task is to acquire yourself a map, the map of a location or a site that you would like to develop. Now, this site will uh, will will consider it as an empty site or a bare site. Um, you need to find an area with varying topography. So with some steep slopes, some not so steep slopes, and perhaps even some valleys and that. Um, so anything but a flat site. Um, you guys can determine your own location. It's not up to us. You guys can go. You guys go search for a site. The only thing that you need to take into consideration is that you need to find anything between 5 to 10 hectares of land to develop. Preferably, um, preferably your site would be surrounded by or it is adjacent to any circulatory means, preferably main road, highway, um, or the sorts. And another thing to consider is that your site is considered the 5 to 10 hectare site that you choose is considered a blank slate. It's considered an empty site. However, the area around your site is not considered empty. So it is taken as is. If there are houses nearby, then you would leave those alone. The only empty area is your site. Everything else is left as is. Now, here's where things get a bit tricky. Um, normally, normally I would ask, or last year and the years before, we would ask the students. We would ask students to come up with sites near Surabaya, not too far away. So we have had students suggest a site from Madura, from Mojokerto. Batu is an excellent area for contoured sites, obviously, and other mountainous regions near Surabaya. And normally, you would, under normal conditions, under normal situations, you would conduct a primary and secondary survey of the site. Secondary surveys are pretty easy. You just need to gather land use you just need to gather land use data, um, topographical data, and topographical data and other physical data. I think you can acquire from you can acquire by way of remote sensing and or institutional surveys to the to the climatology department, and then rules and regulations. You just Google it. However, current conditions limit, if not prohibit, you to conduct a primary survey of your location. Um, Sorry. Now, normally students would travel for a bit to the location, do a walk around, take pictures, and everything. But I think nowadays, nowadays with the restrictions in place, this is impossible to do. My suggestion for this for the primary survey would be to use not only Google Maps, but I think Google Maps is a good starting point. However, I think it's quite limited in some ways. Um, you can use Google Maps in conjunction with Google Earth. to give you an idea of the contours, of the elevation and the slope of an area. I think Google Earth, with Google Earth, what's cool about Google Earth is that you can also create your own maps in it. I'm not exactly sure how that's done, but there's a feature that you can use to create your own maps, and I think there's a greater flexibility as to where you can view as to where and how you can view your surroundings. So make the most of those remote survey tools. I know they're not going to give you as direct feedback or as natural feedback as you would as you would get when you visit the actual site. But by all means, use those tools, and we'll make the best of whatever it is we can use at the moment. So and at least if you can get these uh, if you can get if you sorry rewind and through those remote survey tools, you need to find out existing land use around your site. And since your site is considered a blank slate, you you just need to find out physical aspects like its topography, its whether there are bodies of water, and the sorts of vegetation that are there. Now, with with vegetation, it may be a bit tricky to identify using these um, remote survey tools, but I can suggest I can suggest maximizing the use of screenshots and Google Lens to help you identify these vegetations, um, or perhaps you can just research what sort of species are native to the area that you have chosen. Um, I think that would help. So, for example, in East Java, there are generally these sort of trees and so on. I think Wikipedia is um, is an excellent resource to start with that. Um, Hang on, sorry. Sorry about that. And then, of course, moving from your site, you need um, you have to consider the transportation aspect or the circulatory aspects in within and around your site, um, the street grading, the street network, transportation networks, and what sort of vehicles generally travel through there, and the overall condition of the road, and so on and so forth. Um, you need to find the existing utilities, um, power, drain, sanitation, telecommunication, clean or potable water, and so on. And then cultural aspects or cultural conditions. How are the people or the community that live around the site, and um, what activities do they generally conduct around the site? Um, if they're maybe they're farmers, maybe maybe they're a community of miners. Um, that extract minerals from around the site and so on. If you happen to have a if you happen to have or happen to have a site that is situated near a mine, um, what's their what is the overall economic condition or economic level of the area? Um, how are the buildings around the area and so on? Because these things might affect the theme of your development and the things that you can and cannot build. They dictate what can be developed and what cannot be developed. For example, if you have a very a very wealthy society, and you have a 10-hectare site surrounded by a wealthy society, um, they might not be very welcome to the idea, or they might not welcome the idea of um, you building a homeless shelter, for example, because of security concerns and whatnot, um, and the stereotypical perspectives of whatever it is, stereotypical, yeah, perspectives, or whatever it is people associate with homelessness. So that alone already affects what can and cannot be developed. Um, yeah, sorry. And then internal, external analysis, concepts, and so on. And this just gives you a description, of the mid-semester quiz, the criteria, and this is the criteria for the exhibition or presentation of your work. Mhm, mhm. I haven't I haven't prepared the English version of the evaluation plan and the course syllabus, but I'll put up the latest the latest syllabus and the latest evaluation the latest evaluation plans up in classroom, and once I have the English version once I have the English version set up, I won't replace the files that I've uploaded. Um, sorry, sorry about that. I'm not going to replace the files that I've already uploaded that are in Bahasa Indonesia, but I will. I think that the two files will complement each other in a ways. Just in case there are some technical terms that you don't that you might have difficulties with, and that way you can refer to both documents. Um, you can refer to those documents back and forth at the same time. So, with that, does does anybody have any questions or comments regarding regarding our primary task for this course? It's quite a huge undertaking, actually. Anyone?
Hello.
Oh, hi.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
I'm so sorry I joined late. I would ask if you can try to repeat the um, what we're supposed to do, as in our assignments.
Okay.
I'm so
Um,
sorry.
That's okay. The recording to this session will be made available, of course. But just to clarify a few things, um, in a nutshell, your primary assignment a is to develop an empty site. Is to develop an empty site. Of course, the existing site the existing site may not be empty. However, um, the site, whichever site it is that you choose, will be considered a blank slate. And on this blank slate, you are asked to develop something, anything that is suitable for the site. And how do you determine whether it is suitable? Wait. It should be. Uh, that's the analysis. Where is? I think what is and how you determine what is suitable for development or not really hinges on the existing rules, regulations, and spatial development plans. Also hinging on the existing land use surrounding the site, as I've mentioned. Um, you don't want to build a theme park next to a landfill. Um, Perhaps even environmental identity and the availability of facilities and utilities or lack thereof. So that's how you would start to determine. But this is something that we will discuss. We will discuss further next week. So again, you're developing a site. Some previous 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 classes in the previous years, um, we've had students suggest residential development. So they have a 10 hectare land, and they built several hundred houses. Um, uh, so several hundred houses, um, smaller houses, a cluster of smaller houses, a cluster of medium-sized houses, and a cluster of larger houses, and so on. Other than that, we've had several theme parks actually, um, more more towards the sorry more towards educational theme parks, like you would find, say, Batu Secret Zoo or Taman Mini Indonesia Indah. Those sort of theme parks, and um, not so much of the Disney World or Universal Studios sort of theme park. Um, so we've had those. Last year I had a group developing a chicken farm, um, an integrated chicken farm. So I thought, what's an integrated chicken farm? They were able to identify and allocate spaces for the breeding of the breeding of the chooks, and they also have a portion of their site designated for the abattoir or the slaughterhouse, for the killing and the processing of the chicken and its byproducts, and yeah, processing and packaging. and then they have a marketing office on site um, to deal with all the marketing stuff. So I think the the possibilities are almost endless as to what you can build or what you can develop. I think it's only limited by the legal regulatory framework and or the existing conditions surrounding the site. So yeah, you have a site or you choose a site, not a flat one, but one with a contour, one with one with uh, one with varying degrees of elevation, and you develop that site as you will, but within a given set of or within some constraints up to a certain degree. So I hope that long explanation helps you formulate or give you an idea of the assignment at hand.
Yeah, thank you so much. Will this assignment require us to use some kind of a software or like maybe ArcGIS or something?
Okay, good question. Um, I think you guys are now in your fourth semester. I think in general, I think generally you would take this course along with locational analysis or something. Hang on, let me have a look at my at the schedule.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so this social and community, urban economics, community development, computasi is for the previous. Okay, so yeah, so generally the locational analysis course would complement this course, and vice versa. So as you progress throughout the 16 weeks of this semester, you would learn how to use the tools in the locational analysis course, and then in site planning, you would learn how to put those tools to use, so to say. And then you have urban planning as well and planning process. So yeah, but that's my general take on it. You will use mapping softwares up to a certain extent. I'm not going to. I won't limit. I won't limit what sort of mapping tools you will use. You can use GIS, ArcGIS, or perhaps even our own homegrown land use sim to help you with this task. If you prefer a more simplistic approach, like making or building a map from Google Earth, which you can do, you're more than welcome to do so. Um, or if you have an existing site and you want to conduct the analysis using Photoshop, there's a lot of tutorials on YouTube on how to do it. You can do so. For me, it's the most important thing is the thought process that goes on behind it, and not just the mere visual representation or the visual presentation of here's a map of the topography. So, but like here's a map of the topography, and I think that this would be a great water runoff area. This is where water will collect, and so on. So the thought process behind it is more important um, than the actual tools that you use um, to generate the visuals. So Again, sorry for the long explanation, but the answer is yes. You will use a mapping software for this course, or you will need to use a mapping software for this course.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, any other comments or remarks or questions still regarding this um, regarding the task or the assignment? For your information, you can choose your own location, but if you want to discuss the location with me, or I forgot to mention that that I'm conducting this class with Pak Frendika or Pak Dewa, whichever way you want to call him. If you want to talk to us about the location before you come to a final decision, you're more than welcome to do so. I think I had someone unmute themselves just before I spoke.
Sir,
Yep.
good morning. I want to ask. It says that we should collect a 3D video. By that, what does it mean? I mean, like the 3D video of the development itself using the SketchUp software.
Yes, exactly that. That is what is commonly used. So with previous classes, again, the students have used SketchUp extensively to help them develop and visualize the site. And the final 3D video that is asked of you is a three-dimensional rendition of the SketchUp model. Um, if to keep things simple, it can be just a 3D representation of your final product that you take from an aerial view and you rotate to keep it simple. I've had we've had groups who take things further and create a walkthrough video or a drive-through video of their site, which I think is excellent. Um, so it's entirely up to you how you want to do it. But in a nutshell, the answer to that question is yes, it is a 3D model built using SketchUp or any other 3D modeling softwares that you might be familiar with. Um, if you're familiar with 3D Studio Max, for example, or any Adobe 3D processing softwares, you're more than welcome to do so. Um, and with the video, you can splice it with you can splice it together with two-dimensional images to help you convey your design or your concept to the audience. So that's my answer on the video bit.
Okay, got it. Thank you, sir.
No worries. Um, I've been thinking about a virtual platform to showcase our to showcase not our your work um, for the exhibition. Sorry, for the exhibition bit. However, so my idea in this exhibition session is that we're not the only ones who are going to evaluate. Um, I'm not going to say judge because judge is such a harsh word. To evaluate and assess your work, we're not the only ones, but you guys can evaluate and assess each other's works and give each other points. I've seen how you conducted online discussions through Wakelet. I've enjoyed reading your interaction with each other in Wakelet, so I thought I could recreate that. Um, I could recreate that through this exhibition session, and I was I've been sifting through, and perhaps I would just settle with something that we're already familiar with, which is Flipgrid, or or maybe you can submit, a video. You can submit a video outside of Flipgrid because Flipgrid has a limited duration of limited maximum duration of 10 minutes, and your presentation may exceed, or your video may exceed um, the 10 minutes. So maybe, if you will, you can submit a video to me, and I will upload it. I will upload it to not my YouTube channel, but to upload it to the I'll upload it to either the department's YouTube channel or or the urban planning and design laboratories YouTube channel, and we can hold the showcase there where you can comment, hopefully not dislike, um, each other's works, and we'll and give each other points there. But yeah, it's still I'm still cycling through that. If you have any suggestions on how we could conduct this exhibition bit, um, you're more than welcome to talk to me about it. Okay, so any other questions regarding the assignment? Or okay, if not, here are some references that I would that I'll share with you. Some of these I have. I think Lagro Junior site analysis I have. I don't have Lynch and Hack. I certainly do not have Pramono, but I have others that may be useful to you guys and to us all uh, for this course. Um, and yeah, I think if there are no other questions regarding the course and or the tasks, I think we can end our session here. I will upload the updated evaluation plans and the course syllabus into Classroom. Um, at the moment, they are still in Indonesian. I will update them as we go along, but I will not take down the Indonesian version of the syllabus. So, in keeping with the theme park theme throughout the day, I would like to say thank you for attending this session. You can, for those of you who have not marked your attendance for the day, you're more than welcome to scan the QR code next to our friendly Pennywise the Dancing Clown um, image. Okay, so thank you very much for attending the early session um, today. 7 o'clock's a bit pushing it, but hey, it's it's not as bad as I thought it would be. So thank you guys for showing up, especially to those of you showing up very early today. I know some of you cut out throughout the course, throughout the session. That's okay. You don't need to worry about it. And yeah, thank you very much again. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you guys next week.